Welcome to our 88th Friday Feature Artist interview. Today we get the pleasure of welcoming back into the studio artist, author and educator Claire Benn. This time talking about Out of This Earth, her signature online course with Fibre Arts Take Two. If you're familiar with our interviews, you'll know that we typically start with a gorgeous slideshow of the artist's work. But today we wanted to premiere a video we made about Claire. So we hope you enjoy it. Claire will be with us in the studio on the other side of the video to answer all your questions about earth pigments, soya and cloth. So don't be shy, say hi, and we'd love to know where you are in the world. So let's get started.
I want to try and communicate visually sometimes things that aren't visible and allow other people to potentially experience the same thing. When I started out, I learnt fibre reactive dyes and all the sort of surface design techniques that went with that. And I got to the stage where I'd done a couple of pieces that were very, very minimal, and they were the ones that made my heart sing. And I sort of then realized that I want to communicate stillness and silence, and I wanted to translate my beloved wild landscapes into cloth in an abstract, calm, contemplative manner. Being an artist, I have the ability to visually communicate the things that matter to me, the things that resonate with me, that make my heart sing. The proudest thing for me was giving myself permission to make the work I really wanted to make, which is the quiet, reductive, minimalist, abstract work. And in the last 10, 12 years, all of my work has been based on environment in the sense of a landscape, and I love the wild and remote places. And it is great to be able to go out on location and bring earth back. I like the feel of the dry pigments in my hand. Working with earth pigments is a direct connection back to the land. One of my biggest strengths is the slowness. To sit and look, to sit and ponder, to sit and contemplate. The only way to achieve good composition is to spend time with your work. Ultimately, I think you get better work, you get more considered work, and I think you actually put more of yourself in it. And somehow that shows up in the artwork. Stitch is the slowest process I use. I love to stitch because it slows me down. The whole repetitive, needle in, needle out. And when I'm hand stitching, it is a kind of meditation. It's as much about experiencing any given moment. I think the greatest joy for me is seeing people grow. That's ultimately what teaching is about. It's the ones who really commit to pushing themselves, who have real intention to try and make artwork that is a true reflection of themselves. When you see someone succeed at that, it's amazing. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you create with this media, these processes, what different things you're responding to, and ultimately, of course, I'm really looking forward to seeing how you take it forward to make the work you want to make.
Welcome, Claire. Thank you so much for that gorgeous video.
Good morning, good evening, whatever time it is. Hello.
Yes, it's very early for you, and it's a beautiful evening here in Australia. And honestly, Claire, we have got people from all over the world watching today, from Eva in Sweden. And I won't be able to put everyone's names up, but I'm going to flick through. Hi, Vicky. Hi, Noni from Castlemaine. Hello from Sweden, Belgium. Ray from Suffolk. Gorgeous. Debs Brooke from Portugal. Oh, lots from Sussex. They must be your friends. Cornwall, this is fantastic. London, thank you, everyone. Hi, Patricia, lovely to see you. Elizabeth, hello. Gorgeous Lorna Crane, hello. Wonderful. It is so great to see people here. Claire, I'm going to keep putting people's names up to say hi. You've been busy. What have you been up to?
I knew I was going to be exhibiting at Gallery 57, and that was fine. The work was kind of pretty much there. I had to do the framing and so on and so forth. But then I got a fantastic opportunity to exhibit with Flow Gallery in London, not only in Hill Gallery, but also at the Collect International Craft exhibition at Somerset House. And they wanted some slightly larger works. So it was like, that was in July, and I knew I'd be delivering it sometime in January. And although 6 months feels like a long time, it's not, because I like to take my time, particularly when I'm just sort of sitting and thinking and looking. So there was a fair bit of pressure on. And having delivered all that, I've now had an opportunity to exhibit at Ruthin Craft Gallery in North Wales, which is another superb venue. So yeah, I've just got to keep making. Yeah,
You're in hot demand.
yeah, that's fantastic. It's fantastic, and of course, all this too.
Yeah, all this. This is amazing. Yeah, it's just been such a pleasure working with you, and I'm so excited tonight to be able to share your work that's currently in galleries, and we're going to get to that first and foremost, and then talk all about your online course. And I really do encourage people to ask questions. Claire is such a wealth of information and is so generous in sharing her knowledge, as you'd know if you've ever worked with her before, if you've ever been taught by Claire, or if you've ever seen one of our Friday feature artist interviews. They're our most popular ones. So thank you for that. Claire, for those maybe who are watching that aren't quite familiar with your transition from acrylics into earth pigments, can you just talk us a little bit about that transition and how you made that? I don't know, would you call it a jump? I don't know, a jump into earth pigments or a transition into it?
A transition is probably the better word. I began with the course, the fibre reactive dyes, and all those classic, complex cloth, layering, multiple applications to try and get depth. But having been to the Arctic in January, where everything is a kind of blue-grey or an off-white, and really crusty with ice and snow, I wanted to get that literal surface texture onto cloth. And I knew I couldn't do that with fibre reactive dyes. So that was the point where I began to explore acrylics. And of course, the other reason for going to acrylics is there's no such thing as a white dye, whereas there's plenty of white acrylic out there. So I did a body of work on the Arctic, as if to nothing. And it wasn't, then I went not very long afterwards on a trip to New Mexico to the high desert with Nancy and John and Margaret and Dale. And I became fascinated by just the dryness of it and the colors, the rich earthy colors of it. And I'd been to deserts before, but I hadn't given them sort of that much thought. And I brought some earth back with me. And I knew from going down to Okra in Roussillon, what we're looking at now is the Atacama Desert, so very familiar to me. I knew about earth pigments from a trip to Roussillon in France. So I thought, well, right, there's no reason why I can't put the earth pigments into a clear acrylic binder and literally bring a sense of the land straight into the work.
And I did Inside Atacama as a body of work, primarily using raw earth pigments. And from there, the jump to using soya milk as the binder instead of an acrylic was because I was due to go on the arts residency in Los Gasques or Hoya Air in Spain. And I knew it was an eco site. So I didn't want to be putting plastic product into their collection tanks and so on and so forth. So it you know, one thing led to another, really. But I adore the earth pigments, just adore them.
Yes, yes. Having dabbled in some myself and being obviously on filming with you as well, I think once you go there, it would be hard to go back.
Yeah. And the absolute joy of them is you don't have any washing to do. Yeah.
Amazing. And they don't stain your hands. Yeah. Claire, you mentioned that your work is influenced and inspired by your beautiful wild landscapes that you get to go to. And obviously slow stitch is a big part of your practice as well. And I wouldn't say that your work is abstract. It's certainly not representational. It's probably more non-objective. And I wanted to know, though, how you tackled the challenge, because for you, it's not so much about creating what you see. It's more creating what you feel when you're in a given landscape. So how do you tackle the challenge of visually expressing what you feel in those landscapes?
Well, I suppose what I'm seeing is driving what I'm feeling. So the first sense for me, particularly in the remote landscapes, is one of feeling awe and feeling kind of small and humbled, but not in a negative way. And that whole stillness and silence. I do a lot of just sitting and looking. I take a few photographs, but I don't want to see through the lens of a camera. I'll take some detail shots of a crusty bit of rock or a bit of lichen or something like that. But I just want to experience it and understand what wild natural landscapes are kind of almost doing to my body. And my mind. It is that whole sense of being still and sort of emptied out slightly. And my next step is to write. I'm not a sketchbook keeper. I never have been. I just sit and I write about what I think about, what I feel, what I see, what I experience. And from that writing, I then start to get more specific. So I might say to myself, well, you know, the colors. So then I ask myself, well, what colors? Make a list. I might say to myself, the fabulous texture of the salt encrusted earth in the Atacama. So I then say, well, okay, describe very literally those textures. And from that, words like crusty will emerge. And that starts to give me insights into what I want to see on the work itself. So it's writing. Yeah, I'll do the odd sketch, if you can call it that, back of a fag packet type thing, of things I notice, or a funny little shape I might see in a rock, or in the case of Hoya, I got very taken with some funny little bamboo fences, and I got taken with the shape of the building itself. But my main, if you like, entryway into creating the works is writing, for sure.
Thank you for explaining that. That is beautiful to listen to your process. Let's share some of this gorgeous work with people. I'd love to show some that are currently on exhibition at Gallery 57 in the UK, and also in Flow Gallery as well. The first one that we've got here to share is nematodes. Tell us about this one.
Nematodes is very much not about the land, what I'm seeing as a landscape or a view. It's very much about what is underneath my feet. So I'm a member of Plant Life. I'm a member of the Soil Association. And last night, strangely enough, we watched a program called The Magic of Mushrooms, which wasn't about the psychedelia, fun though that may be. It was more about the fact that everything in the soil is 100% vital to life on Earth. Life on Earth could not exist without the mycelium that the fungi provide, without the little nematodes, without all the little critters that are really busy underground creating healthy soil. And of course, it's healthy soil gives us healthy plants give us a healthy insect population, which then give us good bird life, and all the way up the food chain to, the top predators. So nematodes was very much about thinking about the activity underground.
You can certainly feel it here with this, with your stitch mark here. Is this one of your signature stitches that you use repetitively?
At the moment, yes, because of this interest to what is underneath. And it seemed to me that there's a literal, when you touch them, those stitches are very, very tactile, and you can kind of fluff some of them up.
One of the things I learned from you and that you got super excited about being so good at surface design when we were filming your course was the fact that you could mark make and actually make very intentional fine lines with the soy. You have to adapt the media slightly to do that, which you cover. But this one here really sung to me when I thought about that process here. It's called Another Planet Rises.
Yeah. That was don't ever go to a desert at the same time I go to a desert, because every desert I visited, it rained, or in this case, in Spain, it snowed. And the sky was fantastic at night when it cleared. And I was lucky enough to be there with the full moon. And the moon came up behind the mountains from the east and slowly sort of revealing itself and turning everything silver. So those lines were actually done through couching some paper thread down. But it is possible with liquid soy to generate incredibly fine lines without a great deal of bleed. And that was a wonderful discovery, because it's almost impossible to use liquid media and fine lines on cloth with, say, liquid fiber reactive paint.
That's amazing there. You can see it really well there, how fine that is.
And the background texture came from working directly on the concrete slab outside of the studio.
Perfect. And I wanted to share this little mark making slide. This is some of the explorations that we did during the course. So Claire just went to town on a piece of cloth using all different types of tools and marks, and it was fabulous to watch. And then you'll have to
this is where we turn the liquid soy paint into a thickened soy paint. So anyone who's worked with thickened dyes will kind of understand that. And it allows you to enter yet another territory of mark making using silkscreens or thermofaxes, sponges and rollers and monoprinting plates and needle nose bottles and scraping and stamping and stenciling and all of that. So it's just an activity that says, look, try every tool you've got in your studio. Try it with liquid media, try it with thickened media, see what the tool responds to, see what you respond to. Not only in terms of the tool, how it works in your hand, but what is the quality of the mark that you're generating. That's why I encourage you to start just in black or dark brown, so you're focused on the mark without being distracted by color.
Yes, perfect. And yes, I loved it. I love that module. It's one of my favorites. You could really see that it was great fun. This piece here, Wall and Fence, has currently just sold at Flow. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us about this one. I love this piece.
Very simple process, dry pre-sized linen, so pre-sized with the soy milk and dried, took a very simple monoprint to create the dark texture on the pale background. And the block is an example of how once the fabric is primed with the soya milk, you can use the liquid media without it bleeding. So I just literally masked off that great big black monolith and painted on the liquid media and got no bleed at all. And on the outer edges of the piece where the lines go into the paler areas, some of those lines were drawn either using a ruling pen or a Cola pen, I can't quite remember which, again with liquid media, and they stayed fine. And all I had to do quite literally was accentuate some of them using, as you can see here, thread and couching it down. So using soy paints on cloth is, the cloth starts to behave a little bit more like paper. The media doesn't bleed and spread a great deal. And the more applications you put on, the less bleed you actually get. So for anyone who's worked with fibre reactive dyes and got frustrated about fine line work and thinking, oh God, I've got to make a thermofax, or I can only use a needle nose bottle, working with soya paint opens up a whole new world,
I'm putting myself on mute in the background because the sound gets a little scratchy, it's echoey. So I'm just so I'm in the background like humming and hawing, as are lots of people who are watching. They're like, Vicky's, oh my God, I want to do that. That was with the mark making. Catherine, loving it. Chrissy Day, thanks for joining us. That's lovely. Noni is ready. She is so ready to be there too.
Hello, Noni. Yeah.
So yeah, we're all drooling. So I have to show this one, Claire. I know that it's a fairly simple process, but I wanted to sort of show it as an example of a lot of the time during the filming, you know, there's this beautiful reveal that you do. So, you know, once you've painted the cloth and then you do this gorgeous reveal, you never really know what you're going to get because you work from, what people may not understand is you work from the top down.
Yeah.
And this one here, Earth Nutrients, is just a beautiful example of the pigments doing what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was 2 applications of soy paint. The paler one was the first application. And because earth pigments are a surface product, but they also have a weight to them, if you work on damp fabric and really work in the media, it starts to sink down through the weave of the, in this case, linen, and settle through onto the other side. And without you really doing much at all, it starts to create some fabulous organic textures. The second application was much, much juicier. And I rollered it to death. And although my logical brain told me, well, of course, I'm probably squidging this out quite a lot underneath, I couldn't really see what was going on. So sometimes it's guesswork and serendipity, and you then have to walk away and let it dry. And as you say, the excitement of peeling it off the surface you've been working on to see what you get is just, oh, it's lovely. Occasionally it's shit, but most of the time it's lovely.
Yeah. I know. You get these
without creating the crap.
That's right, exactly. I love it. It's so good. One of the processes that really got me excited as well was the surface textures that you can pull off all sorts, and I can't wait to get. I don't know. You might have to put restraining orders out on me on old buildings and stuff. But tell us about this piece here.
Yeah, well, in the video, people will see me working directly on concrete. They'll see me working on the shingle and the cobblestones in the sort of parking area. What I did with this one is I actually cast myself a 2 by 2 meter concrete slab at the back of my studio. And I dropped a load of 20 mil pebbles into it while it was still wet and kind of whacked them down a bit. And then I worked directly on that lumpy, bumpy surface. So where you see the darker areas, what happens there is the pigment kind of travels down and collects in little puddles in the valleys of that lumpy, bumpy surface, and creates these interesting marks. The first one I did, Biddeford Black, it reminded me of coal, and that triggered me to say, oh, coal, oh, earth, oh, there's a black pigment, Biddeford Black, and I've got that. So let's base this piece around the beginnings of coal, literally 300 million year old ferns, or plants. It's just those fossilized plants that are, we're busy burning now.
Yes. Yeah. I love that, how it's just all connected. Yeah.
Any surface texture. We work on a metal grill. I've worked on the wall, the brick wall and concrete lintel of my studio. That's the other joy, because it's about, a lot of the time, not all of the time, but a lot of the time, about the underside of the cloth. Well, yeah, classic example here, working on John Stitzline's red oxide painted barn in Ohio as a demonstration to students. And when I peeled that off, every detail of that wood grain was visible on the cloth. So it's fantastic. Yeah,
fantastic. That was really great. And we're not going to share too much about how we really, really, really get that pigment in. You'll have to get the course to find out. But it's a bit of fun.
It is a lot of fun. Yeah. And some things work and some things don't. You just have to give it a go. Won't know until you try.
Yeah, exactly. Tara actually hasn't asked a question. Hi, Tara. But she said, I'm a paper person and I'm excited by these textures and subtleties. What have you experimented much with paper and soy,
I have not, Tara, because I'm a cloth person, and I think one of the reasons we're getting a lot of this surface texture, particularly if we're working on the ground, let's say, is I tend to use linen, and there is a weave to that, and then little gaps where the pigment can physically travel through. I think you'd have to choose your paper with care, but I do think it's possible, but it might be that it's more as if you're taking almost a rubbing. But I think if the paper is absorbent enough and not too closely grained, I don't know if that's the right description to use with paper, I think you'll find that you will be able to get results, different results potentially, but nonetheless results.
Perfect. So it'll be great to try and see. So, yeah, definitely.
And of course, you can thicken the media and use it to literally take a rubbing on paper. So that's possible too. Yeah.
Jenny says, I can feel my buzz and excitement returning, Claire. Can't wait for this. That's so great. Thank you, Jenny. And Truded has said, my hesitation to start with soy milk and earth pigment is fading.
Well, Truded, you've got all those fabulous rocks you can work on. It's not what I call a highly technical media. It's very forgiving. So, yeah. You and I'll talk about that next week, Jury, when you're doing the write-on workshop at In Stitches.
Yes, you're a busy lady, Claire. You're so busy. I would plug it for you, but it's sold out. So, but it's a gorgeous.
Starts on Monday, so too late.
Too late. Starts on Monday. Look, I think to help Trude get a little bit more excited, let's play a next video that we have, which is all about this course, what Claire's going to cover in it. It'll show you a little, some footage of course, what we filmed. And then when we come back, we're going to cover things like color, the technical aspects, the struggle. It's not always going to be easy learning a new media, and Claire's going to cover that off. So if you've got questions, pop them in the chat, and we've got plenty of time to answer them. So here we go.
It takes discipline to learn process, and it takes discipline to learn media. And once you've really dug deep into every single process, then set out and make the intentional work. That's the start of your journey, not the end. That's when you make it your own. You discover things that I haven't even thought of yet. You go out in the world and make the artwork you want to make. What I'm hoping for from this workshop is that students won't face some of the frustrations I faced, because this is very much about using the earth pigments on a piece of cloth. But having said that, many of the techniques we cover, not all, but many, are also relevant to people who work with paper. It is suitable for a beginner. It is suitable for someone with lots of art experience or surface design experience. Every new media, every process has a technical aspect to it. But ultimately, I would say there's nothing in here that is deeply technically complex. It's pretty accessible. We're going to cover using earth pigments with soy milk as the binder on cloth. We'll talk about the cloth, how to prepare it, the pigments, making the soy milk, the bean, mixing your paints, some really simple application methods for laying down colour. We'll look at other things like using resist, using something I call a thief. We will have a very fun time exploring the media with many different tools. We touch on colour mixing. We certainly touch on composition. That's supremely important. And we touch on some of the things that you can think about before you start to make the intentional work. I wanted to include a really comprehensive workbook with this program because I know that everybody learns in a different way. Some people will pick it up instantly, others will learn more effectively by looking at some photographs or having a book as a backup. I'm also really looking forward to taking you out on location and encouraging you to work directly on different surfaces, be that a beaten up bit of concrete slab, be that a bit of perforated metal that you've acquired from a scrapyard, be that your own driveway. Fantastic to be able to pick up literal surface texture directly onto your cloth. This workshop is going to be an opportunity for any student to, first of all, learn a new media. Secondly, it may well introduce them to some processes and application methods and techniques that perhaps they haven't explored before or thought about. It's going to enable students to benefit from a slower approach, taking time out, reflecting on their work, thinking about composition, thinking about ultimately where they want to take it in terms of intentional work. I will encourage you to take risks, perhaps take a different viewpoint to what a failure is. There is no such thing as failure as long as you learn. I'm inviting you to come on a journey with me, essentially. A journey that is out of this earth. And I'm also really looking forward to seeing where people take this media, how they adapt it, how they co-opt it, how they make it work ultimately to create the work that they want to make. And I'm looking forward to meeting people.
That was great. Yeah. It's such a true reflection of the cause, Claire, and your generosity and, you know, your ability to teach is just amazing. And one thing that you did say, which I thought was incredible when we were doing the interview, you said, you know, teaching doesn't just lie in the hands of the tutor. It lies in the hands of the student more so. What did you mean by that?
I think a learning process that involves a tutor and a student is very much a two-way street. It's the old saying, isn't it? You can take the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So any individual who is trying to learn something has a huge personal responsibility to pay attention to what is happening as they use that media. To think about, well, what are the variables involved here? You know, how come this time I did it didn't actually work quite so well? Well, maybe that's because your cloth dried out too quickly because now it's a really hot day. And when you did it before, it was, I don't know, in the winter or something like that. It's looking after your tools. It's reading the notes or going back and watching another piece of video, because no learning program can be so comprehensive that it can cover every single possible aspect of it. Thank God, because there are things to do with using earth pigments and soya milk that I'm sure I haven't discovered yet, because I'm still so enamored with what I have discovered. So self-discovery is a really important part of the process. And also understanding, as you know, in your beginner mind, how your own body is working and interacting with tools. Because I may dip my brush and take it across a piece of cloth with a certain level of pressure, and somebody else is going to do that completely differently. And even your mood can affect things. You know, so if you're in a bit of a grump on a day you're painting some cloth, you know, you'll just get a different result. So yeah, the student has to have as much input into the outcome as the tutor. Yeah.
Yes. I'm having a giggle because during filming, we, you may have noticed it on a couple of the videos we did. Claire was rolling this beautiful black roller and white paint, and we were like, "Oh, you just need to do that again. We need to get that in slow mo. Hang on, can you just do that again?" And it was one of the samples for the course, and then we did the reveal, and it was a bit of a dog, wasn't it? It just didn't work, and it just, Claire's like, "What happened there?" And I was kind of in the back of my mind thinking, I kind of think I know what happened. And then the penny dropped, and it was like, "Oh, you guys, you did that."
Just roller it one more time.
So yes, be careful how many times you roller it.
Yeah, because you can get obsessed with watching it all squidge out and the lovely mark that makes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. We've got a few questions from the audience, so we'll go to those now, if you don't mind. Deb asks, love the linen and natural earth-based finishes. Yes. Is there a way to make it permanent and washable? So I may be referring to clothes or?
Yep. Okay. It is permanent, but like any media, even a dye, when you do the rinse out on dyeing with dye products, you're going to lose some color. So the same will be true of an earth pigment. I take you through something called post sizing, which is in simple terms applying a layer of plain soya milk to the piece once you're finished. And everything has to cure. It is permanent, but if you wash it, you will lose some color. But if you wash it by hand and quite gently, you will lose less color. Now, when I did my first washing experiment, I didn't really think about it much, to be quite honest. I just kind of tossed it into the washing machine and did a 15-minute wash. And yes, I lost color. And one of the things I noticed was some rather gorgeous distress marks where the cloth had, rubbed up against each other. And when I taught this class last July at Clay Hill Arts in Somerset, we had a garment maker on the course, and she just loved that slightly distressed look. So yes, you can wash, expect to lose some color, but all things are possible. The more you manhandle it when you're washing, the more distressed it's going to look, but it can be fabulous.
Yeah. Deborah White Art has asked, have you ever considered your work for a high-end homewares range? You can see beautiful handmade limited edition range, cotton hand spun fabrics from the regions you collect your pigments from.
No, I haven't. Partly because I think it's linked to the fact that I never work to commission. Because I never want to repeat anything. And sometimes I don't think I can repeat stuff because there is a level of serendipity in the process. And I think I just want that complete freedom that every time I walk in my studio, I'm free to do exactly what I want to do rather than what the demands of the market might want me to do. But go for it.
Yeah.
Do it yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Amanda's taken a question right out of my mind as well. What media will be needed to make a start on this course? Yeah, I'm with you, Amanda. I want to get started.
Yeah.
And what would you say the minimum?
You need your earth pigments, and let's just jump to the end of the question. I've supplied resource information, certainly for the UK, Europe, North America, and for Australia and New Zealand. So you've got information on the resource material. Soy milk, soy beans you can buy online or from a good health food shop. You're going to need your earth pigments, and I also talk about how to collect and use what I call foraged pigments. You are going to need basic kitchen stuff like a sieve and a pestle and mortar if you want to sort of grind your own, and a bit of polyester curtain shear, couple of jugs, stick blender. None of that, and obviously your cloth, none of that is at all difficult to acquire. Lead times on that, at the moment, postage is a bit of a crazy issue in the UK. So a couple of weeks max.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
a lot of it you already have in your kitchen. Yeah.
And earth pigments, I feel like they're becoming more popular, and you can go and buy them from your local art store if just ask them, or a bigger chain. Typically stocking them around the world now, but I mean, I would suggest, I love going out looking for dirt, looking for clay, and you'll start seeing things differently. So start doing that as well.
Just avoid anything with a lot of organic matter in it. You don't want to be taking it out your veg patch. There's too much organic matter. You want clay-based is the best and the easiest to process.
Great. What about those people who are in love with colour, Claire, and they want to do pinks and they want to do blues and they want to do... Where's your friend Bobby? We spoke about Bobby.
No, Bobby loves pink. Not my thing, but she uses it beautifully. So absolutely, you may have to step into the world of synthetic pigments to do that. So here is a blue that I used, which is, I can't remember whether it's Prussian or ultramarine, but there is a whole range of synthetic pigments with incredibly bright colors. And some of the natural earth pigments, particularly things like the yellow ochres, and the let me come back to reds. The reds, they're pretty strong and colorful. So whilst my preference might be for neutrals or kind of muddy colors, we can just see from this image here, there's a lot of color option, blue and green and red and pinks. It's all out there for you to use. You may, if you want really bright kind of electric colors, you'll just have to be willing to step away from the earth aspect of it and at times use synthetic pigments. But they're great. They're absolutely great.
It was great. It was great that you showed how to mix, and because it's quite different mixing synthetic pigments than it is earth pigments. So you cover that on the course, and we also had a dabble with indigo because I kind of was like, let's do that.
You can use raw organic indigo in the soy milk. It won't give you the same blue as an indigo vat will, but it's a kind of lovely steely blue. It's great. Yeah, really good.
Yeah. I did have a sample of it somewhere. Yeah. That was the indigo. Yeah, that was the indigo there. Yeah. So you'll be encouraged to make swatches and keep your own records, and how much pigment that you use changes it totally, and then you can mix colors, and it's incredible. Yeah.
Color sampling is really important. Color can be as strong or as ethereal as you want it to be. That just depends on how much pigment you put into any given quantity of soya milk.
Definitely. I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say you've taught this course a lot around the UK. You were teaching it in America as well, or was that different with
Yeah, no, I taught it in the US last year, and I taught it twice in the UK last year. I'm not teaching it in the UK this year, but I hope to teach it again in the UK next year. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So playing devil's advocate, I mean, what are people going to struggle with the most about maybe learning a new media or just earth pigments in general?
The first thing they're going to struggle with is learning to put their soya beans into soak the night before they want to use them. But a little sign will help with that. And once you get into it, you kind of just do it. You soak your beans automatically. It's the last thing you do before you leave your workroom. Probably the slowness. It is a slow process. You have to wait for things to dry. So a level of patience is going to be required. There is also a 4-week, what's called curing time. And a lot of people think, oh, you know, I can't do anything with it for 4 weeks. Well, you know, you'll start to run a production line. So I do a lot of my wet processes in decent weather, so the summer months. So by the time I get to, you know, the cooler months, I've just got a vast amount of stuff that's cured, ready for me to put up on the design wall and start contemplating. So patience, some people might struggle with. I think the other thing, and this isn't exclusive to working with pigment and soy, it's if something doesn't work, don't give up. Try something at least 3 times with a conscious awareness while you're doing it. If it doesn't work after that, maybe it's you, or maybe it's just not going to work. But never, ever, ever let that stop you from trying out one of those, well, what if thoughts? What if I do this? What if I do that? Just do it. The only way you're going to find out is to do it. So be brave, be adventurous, take risks.
Yes, great advice. Great advice. Yeah. Ray has asked, do you collect all of your own pigments and how easy are they to purchase?
They're very easy to purchase. I do not collect all of my own pigments because I want a bigger color range to work with than what could be found, you know, locally. In Spain, I couldn't get out. Where I was in Spain has the most fantastic array of colors, but I couldn't get out there because the weather was so bad. I literally couldn't get off the site. So I use both and don't worry about that. And I don't know where Ray is, but I supply the information. So Ray, you're in Suffolk.
Yeah,
all you do is mail order them from Celtic Sustainables, and they supply a fantastic range called Coloured Earth. So really easy, and they're not expensive. They're not expensive.
Yeah, fantastic. That really helped, Ray. Sorry to pop it up there and interrupt your flow. Yes, so the earth pigments aren't expensive to buy and yet readily available.
Yeah.
So,
and you don't need huge quantities. Don't go be buying, you know, 500 grams. Start with 100 grams. That will get you a long way, an awful long way. You know, 100 grams of, and I've even give you advice on perhaps a starting range of colours to choose from.
Yes, perfect. And definitely a black because we're going to want to practice that.
Yeah, and a white.
And a white, yeah. Moniqua has asked, I think this is great. How sustainable is the colour if you don't hang the piece in sunlight? I love this question.
Have you ever seen a rock face fade? No, you have not. So natural earth pigments, I can't be specific around the synthetics. They are remarkably UV resistant. So in my own work, probably the thing that is most susceptible to UV would be the thread because that's coloured with a dye. But they are the most UV resistant media out there. So you don't have to worry about that. Just do it and run a test. I haven't had any fading at all on mine. So they're great. Good question.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Noni has asked, does the cloth stay soft enough to stitch or is it quite firm?
It definitely stays soft enough to stitch, but I'm going to sort of hold this one up. This is one of my favorites from the class. I never know which way to turn it. Oh, let's go that way. There you can see that I'm couching this and I'm doing my funky little nematode things. So absolutely it's soft enough to stitch, but the other benefit of it is the soy acts a little bit like a starch, and it stiffens the cloth enough that you can stitch a single layer without, having to worry about tension and distortion. All I would say on stitchability is make sure that you don't use a really, really tight weave. Cotton, such as bed sheeting, is a great example of a tight weave. That's why I love the linen. 7.5 ounce cotton canvas is also great. It'll be the weave of the fibre as much as the pigment load that will drive how easy or difficult it is to stitch. So yeah, knock yourself out, Noni.
She will. Is the linen unsized?
If by that do you mean PFD, prepared for dyeing, scoured? If that's what you mean, yes. Everything you use, you want to scour it to get rid of the dressing that is on the thread when the manufacturer weaves it. We then use soya milk to pre-size cloth before we start working on it. But actually, if I talk about a parallel to that, the parallel would be that when you're working with fiber reactives, you're going to soda soak. You're going to put the soda in the fabric. All a pre-size does is get some soy milk into the fabric before you start using it. And having done so, you've got the choice between working on it damp or leaving it to dry and working on it dry. And you'll just get different results. And I encourage you to explore both.
And would the same be said for using different weights of fabric as well? Amanda was just interested about that.
I've used 7.5 ounce cotton canvas. I've used linen, and I've used bog standard muslin, calico. I haven't used something like a cotton sateen, but again, only because I don't want to have to stitch into cotton sateen. The other thing I would say is if we are going to exploit the weight of the earth pigments and their ability to sink, look for fabrics that aren't too tightly woven so that you can really give yourself a good chance of getting the results where the cloth is sinking through and it's actually the underside of the cloth that ultimately is going to give you the delicious textures. So don't go for anything too thick like upholstery fabric or too tightly woven.
Great. Thank you so much, Claire. That's amazing. Marian's just asked about onion skins. So she's wondering whether she could use those, or does the colour need to be in powder form? So maybe just a little bit of a difference between eco dyeing and earth pigment.
Everything, well, an earth pigment by its nature is a powder. What you would need to do, I think, well, you would probably need to get that onion skin color down into almost a concentrate, perhaps by reducing it, so that you've still got a liquid. You can certainly put something called dye lakes. Natural dye lakes can be used with soya milk and work directly into the surface of the cloth without, all the normal natural dye processes. That is, it's out there, and I didn't cover it because it really takes us into more complex territories. But if you're a natural dyer, then explore the use of dye lake with soy milk. So yeah, it's possible.
Cool. Yep. Perfect. It's impossible to cover everything, isn't it? It's just so people know, it's 11 hours and 45 minutes long. So we could have covered more, I don't think. It's fabulous, though. Don't get me wrong. It's a good 11 and 45. And trust me, it's great. Jackie says, I work with clay and have been using pigments to monoprint. Love this question as well. Would the oxides and pigments be similar?
Yeah, many pigments contain oxides. And in fact, anything with the word oxide in its color, like red iron oxide, they are the what I call the heavy lifters, the punchy. They'll stain almost anything they come into contact with. So yeah, oxides are present in certain earth pigments. So very similar.
Great, thank you. I was agreeing with you on mute.
Yeah.
Sonia says, it's Sonia from Vienna. Hello. Stupid question, no such thing. I suppose brought ready soy milk isn't the same as self-made, not usable. So yeah.
I am aware that people use purchased soy milk. I personally wouldn't recommend it, partly because it's more expensive. Secondly, you have no idea what the strength in terms of the protein content of that soy milk is. And thirdly, it will have things like preservatives and who knows what else in it that can affect the outcome. And to me, using the bean to make the milk is a really easy process. I mean, if you can make baby food or soup or use a stick blender, that's all there is to it. And I like to be fully in control of my media. So to be frank, if I screw it up, the solution will lie in my hands, if you like, as opposed to some manufacturer. So just bite the bullet and make your own milk.
Yeah. It's nice. It's actually a lovely process. Yeah. And it's fun soaking the beans. It does keep you disciplined, and then you forget. And then if you leave your beans soaking like I did, it actually starts to ferment. It gets a bit stinky.
It has to be used on the day. It has to be used on the day of making. But it's no big deal.
You can't get busy. So Noni asked, have you used pre-purposed cloth or repurposed?
What, as in old clothing or something like that?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, I mean, not very far from where I'm sitting.
Oh yes, show us your stash.
Well, it's even got the owner's name on it. This is a bit of antique French hemp. It's actually an old smock, which I've ripped the sleeves off of. But for sure, look, it's got a lovely mark on the back already. For sure, you can use repurposed cloth. Just remember, if it has color on it, that color will affect the color of the pigment you put down on top of it. But pigments have what's called a coverage or an opacity to them in different levels. Some are more opaque than others. So, and they're surface products. So they can often, they will either obscure what lies beneath them in terms of color, or if they're a more translucent pigment, they will change that color and obviously in themselves be changed by the color they're sitting on top of. But yeah, repurposed cloth, definitely.
Yes. Perfect. Leslie says she's so excited for the course. I had a try with earth pigments on a course with Claire last year and have been waiting for this to come up. Yes, since then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leslie. We look forward to it. We'll be releasing the course. It'll be open for enrollment on Friday around 5 o'clock Australian time, so a couple of hours previous to starting live today. And it's all going well. We're just putting the final touches on it. So we encourage people to sign up on the waiting list, and the people on the waiting list gets first dibs. So they'll be emailed and let know when the cart's open so people can purchase. And we typically leave the cart open for a couple of weeks. But recently our courses have just been selling out within, less time than that. So the waiting list will be emailed and given plenty of notice for when the cart is closing as well. So that's another reason why, just to pop your email address down, we can keep you informed.
And what happens, when do you re-release it? When do you open it back up again?
Well,
or is that a bit of string?
Yeah, no, it is. It depends. Well, look, it all depends on your schedule, and how popular it is as well.
Yeah.
Typically once a year, Claire,
Yeah.
we'll do it.
Yeah.
But in the case of another course we did recently, we sold out in 4 days. So we actually re-released it within the next sort of 6 months, and that went well too. So if that's the case on Friday, then we'll certainly give people the opportunity to join again if you have the time, Claire, because it is a commitment.
And the reason for doing it this way is, of course, you know, you offer people the opportunity to join this community, and we do Q&A sessions every now and then, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So it's not just as simple as you get more than just the video and the book.
Yeah. Yes, correct. Yeah, you actually get access to you, Claire, for a good 8 weeks, and Claire gets to answer questions and help you. Which is fantastic. I think that's one thing that the students love. You know, they love that support. A lot of people just go it alone, and that's absolutely fine as well. But having a community to share, and what you actually find is that the community helps each other. It becomes this sort of hive mind mentality, and we all kind of problem solve together, which is nice. Yeah. So it's not all on you; it's on us as well to learn and problem solve. But so it's fantastic. So yes, next Friday the 17th. Sorry, Diane, not today. Yeah. No, not today. We've still got a bit of work to do, but it's coming along and it's really beautiful. So fantastic. So Rita's excited as well. I've done my own experiments using sandstone soil. Yeah.
Okay. So sandstone is tricky to use because it's more akin to rock than clay. So it's incredibly difficult to grind it down to a fine enough powder to get some of the results. And it is more difficult because it's harder for the soy milk to bind it to the cloth. If you want to carry on using sandstone or sand, I would recommend using it with acrylic medium and applying the acrylic medium to your cloth or the acrylic paint, and then using a sieve to let the sand drop into it. Because when you put sand in any medium, sooner or later it sinks to the bottom. That's also true of earth pigments, but sand, because it's rock based, has a very heavy gravity, and it's hard to use that way. But if you want it to stick, then use acrylic rather than soy.
Perfect. I've got 2 quick questions. Well, I hope they don't have to be quick, but I've just got 2 last questions for you, Claire, because I think they're really important to cover. The first one is, if students who are taking the class, or before they take the class, what if someone's thinking, well, am I going to make a finished piece? Does Claire take me, from woe to go? Am I going to come out with, work for 2 gallery exhibitions that you've got going on at the moment? What's your advice to people thinking that?
I would first of all say that the way I teach, where I've always taught, whether it's live or any other method, is I think what you have to remember is your learning media and your learning process. And it is very difficult to do what I call the intentional work at the same time, because you don't know what you don't know. So will you come out of this workshop with a finished piece? Quite possibly. So there's a couple on the wall behind me, the almost white and the dark, that were done as part of this workshop. So you will get some results that go, oh, I'm good enough that if you just do this or add some stitch, I'm good enough to take forward to completion. But I would say don't make that a goal of this workshop. The purpose of this workshop is to learn the media, is to learn the process, understand some of the variables about it, learn what you respond to, and probably there'll be things you don't respond to. Once you've done that, then you can say, right, I've now got to grips with this, and I can go on now and make the intentional work. And I do cover that. I do talk about, we've got a dedicated session on composition. So if you do get something with potential, how can you move it forward? And I do cover my approach to working with intent. So you might get something, but I'm not going to sit here and guarantee it because that's kind of down to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was sort of covers my next question as well, Claire, which was, you know, in every class that you teach, you said there's always a component or section on composition, and Out of This Earth is no exception to that.
Yeah.
You know, why is it so essential for you to teach composition? And it feels like a silly question to ask, but
no question is silly. Composition, I think Agnes Martin said it, you know, heavens above, she was one of the greats. The quote goes something like, to achieve a good composition is one of the hardest things to do. And I think I'm aware, and I'm not an exception to this either. There is something, you know, kind of joyful and exciting about doing the actual wet process. Yeah, and I completely get that. I'm no different. But to understand what makes something into art is a completely different kettle of fish, because you're having to consider lots of things, you know, balance and resonance and content and directionality and how your eye moves across the piece. And that's a lot harder to learn than the process, if you like. It's slow. It requires an awful amount of looking and thinking. And therefore, it requires discipline to do that, because you're having such fun, you know, sloshing on paint and trying this and trying that and trying the other. Sooner or later, you've got to step back, identify the pieces that are resonating with you and that you think have potential, and then you've got to start literally engaging with them, having a conversation with them, and figuring out what is necessary to move it into that final sort of stage.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, I love that. And I think that's the beauty of having that 4-week sort of enforced looking time, isn't it? Whilst the piece is curing, you get the opportunity to look at it and pin it upside down and look at it all different angles and become familiar with it. Yeah.
No, curing needs no special place. You can cure it hanging on your pin board. So it's not a problem.
Yeah. Leslie asked, is there a materials list so that people can get supplies prior to starting the course? Leslie, I'd be happy to send you one, no problems. If you join the waiting list, I'll get that out to the waiting list early next week. And then if you just rewatch this video as well, Claire actually did mention it in a section of this video as well. So if you head back and watch the replay. And then Summer as well, she said, I'm completely new to this. Sorry for the basic question. How do you wash the dyed cloth so it keeps the colour? Claire, do you mind just quickly recap that?
No. First of all, it's not dyed. A dye process involves a chemical reaction inside the fibre of the cloth, and this is not a dye. I'm going to just move slightly because I'm blinded. There we go. That's a bit better. This is a surface product. It does not need actually to be washed at all. The cloth will not smell of milk. The cloth will not rot. The cloth will not continue to attract moisture to itself. So for artworks, there is no need to wash it, full stop. If you do want to wash it because it's a wearable or a usable, i.e. a home furnishing thing, then I talk about something called a post size to really make sure that pigment is locked in, and you're going to wash it gently by hand. But for artworks, there's no need to wash it at all.
Yay, that's fantastic. Thanks, Summer, for that question. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in tonight and all your great questions. It was fantastic. We tried to preempt as many as we could, but you guys came up with some beauty. So I was so pleased that everyone could. And there's been some great conversations about the paper makers. They're going to look at thick cotton paper and using their press. So there's been some great conversations happening in the background as well. So Claire Benn, it's always an absolute pleasure. And I said it in the beginning, and I 100% mean it. Working with you continues to be a joy. I've got my little sample stash here from what we played with after hours, because we'd spend the whole day filming and then we'd have a beautiful meal and then we'd be back in the studio having a play, and it was just a fabulous experience. I can't wait to see what all of your students around the world create with this wonderful technology.
I'm looking forward to that. This is really, really important that you learn the process and then you make it your own.
Yeah. And you say it in this video. We're going to play the main show reel for the course now, and then we're going to go straight into the exit video of our Friday feature artists. And if everyone could please pop a comment in for Claire and just thank her very much for her time and her generosity, that would be much appreciated. And I'll play that during the exit slideshow. But for now, Claire, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait for next Friday, and we're going to get earth pigmenting. Is that a word?
Earth pigmenting, yeah, why not? Yeah, soy pigging.
Soy pigging. Yes, I love it. I absolutely love it. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
Working with earth pigments is a direct connection back to the land. I love the wild and remote places. And it is great to be able to go out on location and bring earth back. I like the feel of the dry pigments in my hand. This workshop is called Out of This Earth because everything we use in it comes out of this earth. I think it's the first thing out there that specifically addresses the use of soy and earth pigments on cloth, with cloth as your substrate. Ultimately, the course is about enabling people to work with the earth pigments and the soy milk in an eco-friendly manner. It's also about building confidence, encouraging exploration and risk-taking, composition. It's also about helping you move forward to get to a position where you can work with intention and start to think about using the media and the process to make your own work. One of the things I'm trying to get across is it takes discipline to learn process and it takes discipline to learn media. And once you've really dug deep into every single process, at that point, then set out and make the intentional work. Ultimately, you're taking this course to gain mastery of specific media, specific processes, with the end goal being to make artwork. If I'd had access to information such as we're covering on this workshop when I first started out, it would have enabled me to get to grips with the media and the processes a lot faster. To know what are the useful things to have around me before I start, for me that was an important topic to cover. There are things that you can do with this media that you can't actually do with other media, such as acrylics. Being willing during that process of learning to let go of outcome is absolutely vital. If you learn and it moves you forward, you haven't wasted a thing. I want you to feel at the end of it that you have a level of independence, that you can just go for it by yourself, knowing that you've got the safety net of the online workshop to go back to whenever you feel like it. So I'm inviting you to come into my studio, share my space, and I'm inviting you to come on a journey with me, essentially. I'm excited about seeing where people take this, how everybody responds in a different way, and in the much longer term, the kind of results they're generating with it. What we actually have to acknowledge is there is no completion. Once you're confident with the media and the processes and the tools, that's the start of your journey, not the end. That's when you make it your own. You discover things that I haven't even thought of yet. You go out in the world and make the artwork you want to make.